Good morning and welcome to another episode of Beyond the Clover podcast. I am Stephen Steiner, the YPA for Clinton, Caldwell, and DeKalb counties. And joining me this morning is Chelsea Corkins. She is the 4-H specialist for Sheraton, Saline, and Carroll counties, correct?
That's right.
I thought I was right. I had to go double check. I was like, man, you ever have something and you're like, because you've been on the job. Have you been, is it a year, 2 years?
Oh, no, just since June of last year, so about 10 months.
It seems longer than that. That's why I was second guessing. I was like, I feel like she's been here a while.
Yeah, no, I completely understand that. And nothing like getting people's counties wrong. You know, the places they live and they value. You're like, oh, no, I didn't mean to do that. But it happens for sure. No, that was perfect.
I did that when I first started, and I did it in like year two, where I'd like have agendas, and it would be say Clinton County for DeKalb counties, and they would ruffle little feathers.
Yeah,
Oh, you don't think enough of us to get our own county right? I'm like, do you know I have 3 counties and a bunch of kids.
right.
I'm not always going to keep things straight.
Yeah, no, it happens for sure.
So, were you a 4-H'er growing
I
up?
was not. So my backstory is kind of interesting. I was always considered to be the city cousin. I lived in a town of 40,000. It's not like I lived in, huge metro Chicago or anything, but I didn't live on a farm. I lived in a town in Kansas. My cousins and rest of my family all lived out on farms, were a lot more active in the agricultural world. So I was not involved in 4-H when I was younger. I did a little bit of Girl Scouts, always enjoyed it, but wasn't involved in 4-H. It probably wasn't until I was in college, really probably about when I started my master's, that I go, I really like this education component of what we're doing, particularly in the non-formal world. I was already in agricultural engineering, which is what my master's and my bachelor's are in. And I said, how can I continue to do this? How can I continue to teach youth about things that I'm passionate about, which were STEM and agriculture and these areas that I didn't necessarily explore as a kid, but as an adult really realized how valuable they were. And enjoyed connecting with our youth. And so that kind of got me going from there. So no, I do not come from a 4-H background, but I've learned a lot and really enjoyed it so far.
Yeah, Pat Wood was another person I had on who didn't have any
Yeah.
4-H experience,
Yeah.
growing up. Um, 40,000. You say that like it's okay. I graduated with 9 people in my class when I graduated
Right.
high
Yeah.
school, in a town of 433 people.
Right. Yeah.
I go to Kansas City and get anxiety because I'm like, what's with all the people? Where are the
Right.
cows? Where's the cropland? And you just casually said that, like, oh yeah, no
I
big deal.
know. I know. Yeah. Well, and that's why it depends on who you're talking to. So I lived out in Virginia for 6 years. And I say 40,000 and people go, oh yeah, that is tiny. And people, in Midwest, 40,000. Oh, that's probably one of our top 10 towns in some of our states. And so it really is about context. You have to kind of remember where you're coming from. Yeah, 40,000 to me was, I mean, growing up, it was a good sized place. But it certainly wasn't, it wasn't a Kansas City. Yeah, I remember going there as a kid and thinking this Kansas City was absolutely huge, and it still is for sure. Um, yeah.
So what took you to Virginia?
That's a great question. So I mentioned that I did my bachelor's and master's degree in agricultural engineering. So a really big interest in science and specifically water resources. So after I completed my master's, I liked teaching so much that I decided I wanted to be a professor at a university. So I went to Virginia Tech to start a PhD in biological systems engineering, specifically looking at streams and water and erosion, all that kind of stuff. Worked on that for about 2 years and realized it wasn't for me. I liked teaching a lot, but there's unfortunately a lot of requirements for professors that don't focus on teaching. At least not in the avenue I was interested in going down. There are certainly options for people, don't get me wrong. I don't want to bash on higher education by any means, but it just wasn't for me. And so I continued for another year and a half and found that I was ready to pivot out of that PhD program and went to go and work for Virginia Extension for about 6 months. working with their Virginia agricultural leaders obtaining results, Valor program. It's an adult agricultural leadership program. And that really got me hooked on non-formal education. That, as well as our Virginia Governor's School, I helped out with that for multiple years as a PhD student. Really, really enjoyed getting to teach people about agriculture and how, the entire system works together. And it's not just what you might think of with cows and livestock. There's so much more involved in it. You can have, one of my favorite things to learn about was robotic dairies, how innovative and technology driven some of our agriculture and dairies have become. So that was really cool. So then I pivoted back into a master's program in agricultural education at Virginia Tech, finished that up in 2 years, and then came back to the Midwest.
Wow,
Yeah.
that's awesome.
A little bit of everywhere, for sure. It was a great journey. I love telling the story because I think it's important for our youth and our families to realize that that might be the path you go down. It's great if you know what you want to do and it works exactly in your favor. But for some of us, that's not going to happen. Life throws curveballs, and it's important to know yourself and what you're interested in and follow that as best you can.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's one thing we've talked about with, uh, you know, being resilient and, making changes and adapting to the things that may not always go your way, or maybe they do go your way, but you just don't have that passion for it.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
And you talked about, agriculture and 4-H and stuff like that. And that's one thing I like to say, and I feel like I say it all the time, is 4-H is more than cows and plows.
For sure, absolutely.
And really, and reality is we have our STEM programs and a lot of other stuff dwarf our, agriculture based stuff. I mean, we still are heavily involved in agriculture, but not to where it was 15, 20 years ago.
Sure, sure. I like us always to think about 4-H being agriculture and STEM and this and that. It doesn't have to be we're this, but sometimes we're this. You can do both of those. You can do all of those things. And I really love that we're excited to do that we're interested in the expansion of agriculture, more than just the traditional ag, and then things that maybe aren't directly related to agriculture either. So I enjoy that for sure, that we're doing a lot of different things.
So you were talking about your background, and one of the things you were talking about was, and I can't remember the exact phrasing because you said it, and I was listening and,
Okay.
and not trying to remember. But we were talking about water and all of that stuff and erosion. So have you looked into the water festivals that we do?
I have, and I am so excited to learn more. It sounds like you all are big experts at those, and that they have turned into a great time for everyone involved. Yeah, can you tell me a little bit about them? So I was going to help out with them this spring, but actually, because of what we've got going on, wasn't able to get there physically. Learned a little bit, but I'd love to hear a little bit more from you all for those who have been involved in it previously.
So just a quick rundown. We talk about like soil erosion, pollution of the water, water quality, water treatment plants. I had a lady who that's what she did. I believe she actually has a much bigger background, and I'm sure if she heard me, she was like, "You just reduced me to the water treatment plant lady." Um, but so we talk about that. We have like soil in the bottle and talking about the different soil types, the soil biome and what's all in there. We talk about, the killer in London. What was that station? I can't think of it. It's not the
Mm,
plague, but it was, talk about how ships brought in this disease
yeah,
that was carried through, and you go find the kids get to do an interactive game where they go find where it came from, and kind of like Clue and stuff like that. And
right.
then there's biodiversity Jenga, and where you take some things away, and then what happens when all these parts and pieces of biodiversity is no longer there, and how it collapses underneath of it.
Right. Oh, that's so cool. And this is for fifth grade generally, or what age group do we usually interact with?
I think it's fifth graders.
Fifth grade. Yeah, that sounds right. That sounds right.
and I do an Enviroscape, which is just a model of a watershed, around a town, and talk about point and non-point source polluters, which
Awesome.
and I get fun with it. I I got a little too far off last year in one session. I didn't mean to, but I was trying to show them the what the effects of pollution can be, and I showed them uh, the it's like a polluted river. It's just like nothing but floating trash
Uh-huh.
in one of the third world countries, I think. And then I showed them they were talking about straws. They're like, yeah, I throw my straws out the window, and I showed them like removing the straw
Mhm.
from the turtle.
Oh
Bit
boy.
too far on that one. Bit too far.
But some of those kids might remember that pretty well, and hopefully in good ways.
Yeah, it's water festival scared straight.
Yeah,
So
yeah, that's true. That is true. Yeah, no, they sound like they would have been an absolute blast to be a part of this year. I'm excited to get involved in them in the future. I remember when I was a third or fourth grader, one of my favorite things, and by favorite, I mean one of the few I remember, is what we called Discovery Day, which sounds similar to the water festivals that you all host in Northwest Missouri. But it was focused on getting the kids out and doing some hands-on things, activities that were 15, 20 minutes max, not a huge lesson, no PowerPoints necessary, things that are really hands-on, and telling them through stories and games. And boy, did that stick with me for sure. And so I'm very excited to see where these water festivals, not only where they are now, but where they might be able to go in the future, whether that's something that other counties would be interested in expanding into. I think it's a good opportunity to get the kids out of the classroom, and certainly while respecting that that teachers need to meet our show me standards that we've got in Missouri. And so how can we as 4-H help them out meet some of that, do some hands-on opportunities? So I think they sound fantastic, and I'm excited to help out with them in the
yeah,
future.
and it ties in with the map testing. So it's kind of a review for them where they're
Mhm.
out and about, and it I think I might have learned more than what they have,
Yeah.
just about how to handle students, because
Yeah.
I don't come from a pure education background.
Sure, sure.
So I made it through half a semester of doing ag education, where I was getting my master's
Hmm.
and doing grad and undergrad at the same time.
Hmm.
And I realized that setting was not for me. Um, Honestly, when I was in there I was like, these are the future teachers, and I'm like, I'm out. I can't do this. The
Well,
class
that's
was.
okay. Yeah.
I'm used to being in the ag department where everything is, it's test day, and that's what your points are.
Right, right.
And so there was a lot of busy work, a lot of stuff, and I, I needed more of a challenge.
Sure.
And I maintained I think I had a 3.3 in both of them, while I'm taking grad school classes in
Right.
education, and I have no background whatsoever in it.
Sure. That's a lot. That's a lot. But that's great that you were able to kind of discover that about, like, oh, this might not be for me. But you found a way to get into education still. I think that's really important for a lot of our youth to realize that education is so much more than in classroom teaching. And that is nothing against our formal education teachers at all. They are amazing. My younger sister um, used to be a preschool and kindergarten teacher. Really glad she was willing to do that. So, but it's good to, yeah, discover some of that, of how much structure do you need as an educator as well. And sometimes that comes out in high school, sometimes that comes out in college, sometimes it'll be even later in life. So that's really good to hear that you were able to find kind of an opportunity to still do some of those things afterwards.
Absolutely. And this gives me the freedom to go out and do that, just on a smaller scale, but
Mhm.
also I have an informal, good Lord, struggling with words today, informal
Good
way
thing
of.
we're on a podcast.
Exactly. And no one's going to watch this, so we're good. Uh, Informal way of working with the youth. I did some leadership stuff when I was in Hereford Association, junior Hereford member, and stuff like that, where I still worked with the kids and had that connection even beyond that when I was coming through and showing and selling my livestock. So I still had that, and it was closer to the setting, not no structure, nothing is as far as what we're doing here with curriculum based or stuff like that. But when I found this, it ended up being a great fit for me.
Right. So what are some of the other things you gained from your leadership opportunities that you were involved in?
Outside of 4-H,
Oh, yeah, any of them. I'm always very interested at how, we talk about youth needing to get involved in leadership, but we don't really talk to those that were in leadership positions afterwards as much. What did you learn from it? What did that mean, whether it was 4-H or otherwise?
probably the communication skills, and that's one thing that I struggled with, and I developed a filter for this job. So I did not have one in school. I was the kid who just, was always talking nonstop, and I didn't understand that. I also anxiety, and I'm an introvert, and like all that stuff just combined in one, where I was not very good at communicating.
Sure, sure.
And so I would try, how people will say things nicely and use a filter. I tried that, and then I would just finally blurt out what I wanted to say in the beginning. So when I went through 4-H and when I went through FFA and on a lot of stuff growing up, that's where I struggled with the interaction and stuff like that. And that's this position and some of the others, and just learning and reading people has helped me in college classes. And there's times where uh, I'll be talking, or Debbie will throw, "Hey, chime in. What do you think about this?" And I'll
Mhm.
just like black out and say something and have no idea what I'm saying. Usually, I try to enter into a joke if I have nothing
Right.
to say at the moment, so I can come up with something to say. But so going through all of that, and then having this job where I have to communicate so much more with emails and talking to kids and
Right,
parents and
right.
developing a filter and learning how other people, I watch so much. And sometimes if you've seen the most recent like staff meetings and stuff, you're like, okay, he's clearly comfortable. But my first couple years, I did not say much of anything. I
Right.
listened a lot and learned before I really, felt comfortable where I started speaking up myself.
Mhm.
So that's one thing, and trying to teach those kids and then connect with those, because when my 4-H journey, I started when I was like a sophomore in high school. And so I only had a few years, but I just did shooting sports, photography for a little bit, realized I wasn't very good with that, campground cooking. And I never did any county, state, regional,
Mhm.
well, I take that back. I did do state shooting sports. I did that one time or
Mhm.
two times, maybe just once. But that's where I'm trying to reach those kids who are like me, who, are still in their shell, so to speak.
Right, right. Yeah. Now, I love your feedback on how a lot of it is reading the people you're with. And so for those of us who are a little bit more like me, I became an extrovert. So I was very quiet in, grade school or in middle school. Maybe people will remember that differently. But I would say once I kind of found my groove and found the people that I, was really excited to be around, I was a lot more willing to say things, to be out there, to be the leader of a team. But what I think I learned a lot through the groups that I was involved in leadership positions was how to motivate the rest of that team, how to read how they're feeling. There's a lot more that you get than, hey, this group of 4 people are going to come together to work on this project together for an hour or two this day. But that's not really our lives. It's so much more than that. And so I think 4-H being able to teach youth of how do you interact with groups that are different than you, people that are different than you, how do you motivate people, how do you keep a team going, that is just absolutely invaluable to people's futures. And that I think has really helped me be able to be successful at my job, to let people know, hey, it's okay if you need to step away for a while, or you don't make this meeting. That's not really what I'm so focused on. It's a lot more of how do you feel about what you're doing, and are you motivated? Because I will never be there 24 hours a day to watch over employees or to watch over teammates. It's about keeping that team going and finding their strengths and their interests, and motivating them. And so I think you make a really good point on how do you read people in the room about that. How are they feeling? Are they stressed? If they're stressed and overwhelmed and you're planning on adding more to their plate, oh boy, is that going to backfire on you. So yeah, I think that's really a good observation.
I'll tell you what, and I didn't realize it in so much as far as like technical terms until we had our retreat. And this is when we were at Windermere, one of my first years.
Mhm.
We did an icebreaker. I didn't realize how much I needed an icebreaker as an adult.
Yeah, yeah.
And I didn't realize that other people, felt the same way. And so we went through these other professionals that I work with. A lot of them I looked up to, and they were like, "Oh yeah, this was really helpful." And I was like, "Wow, I didn't think, I thought that stuff ends when you're a kid, but no, it actually carries with you."
It
And
does.
so that stuff does help. Um, and I think one thing that 4-H has been good about is exposing kids to leadership. And there's so much, there's like leadership. We have like teen leaders and groups about leadership that we encourage these kids to go to participate in. But there's other ways that you can lead. You can lead by example. You can it's weird when I say I'm a leader, but how I lead, if I'm let's say I'm a group leader,
Mhm.
we're gonna have fun. There's gonna be a lot of joking around. We're gonna work together, and by the time that we're done, we're not gonna realize that we accomplished our goals because I'm more casual and relaxed about things.
Mhm, mhm,
And stress, Steven, is chaotic. And don't worry, I'll get the job done, but it's not the same.
mhm. Sure, sure.
um I don't know if you've been exposed to this because you've been here 10 months, but we in the Northwest region, and I take great pride in this. um and one of our retreats that we had to work together as a region against other regions.
Oh.
One, the Northwest region is extremely competitive.
Oh my goodness. I have definitely learned that, if nothing else.
Like, and I'm not saying the others aren't, but there's a level of competition that, but even, not all of us get along all the time. And not all of us are going to like each other, and that's fine. You know, I have no problem with that. But as far as a region and staff, and I hope that's something that kids may not realize, but we have strong leaders in this region and staff members. And I think it shows through with our kids as well, because when we have to work together, whether we like each other or not, we get the job done and we do it well.
Mhm.
And I realized that when we were competing against the others, of our communication skills are better. And it's not always verbal. We do well with nonverbal. We had a nonverbal communication activity and we crushed it because we worked with each other. We've,
Right.
you know, going through that stuff. And that's some of the stuff that, I think the kids are beneficial to, that they don't always realize. But now, like looking back at some of the stuff that I had growing up, I'm like, oh, wow, I had really good leaders. I just didn't realize that's what it was at the time.
Right, right. Yeah, I sometimes tell kids that leadership is certainly an important word and concept, but mentorship is just as much, in my opinion. Because I think back to who was important in my life, and I had a lot of people that I would classify a little bit more as mentors, than leaders. They were probably both, but they really, yeah, set good examples of how can you work with groups that aren't like you. Work with groups that, yeah, you don't always enjoy being around them 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. But how can you really find that common goal, those common objectives, and really put your strengths together to work well? And it doesn't always have to be in a team effort. It could just even be reaching out to people about things, getting them, something started. How do you get people on your team to do that? It's definitely an acquired skill, and one that 4-H has done a lot, from what I've just even seen in 10 months and the kids that I've gotten to interact with. Very impactful, and boy, is it really important for those either the YPAs or the specialists to be as willing to be involved with that and set those good examples too. Great observations. I agree. Northwest seems like a really great home for me to have.
Yeah, and then they have the Northwest is the best chant,
I
and
know. I mean,
that's exactly what my reaction is. I mean, you can't argue it, but
no, definitely not. It's a good place to be for sure.
so what was your drawback to the Midwest? Obviously, you're from there. Is it more than home? Why Missouri?
Sure. Yeah. It definitely is home. I will admit, when I was looking for jobs, I had a very specific definition of what I wanted to do. I wanted to be an extension. I wanted ideally to either be in a STEM specialty or something that really allowed me to engage the community on a broader spectrum, which is where my title of county engagement specialist, community engagement specialist, really drove me to this position, was my ability to get to work with kids, but also work with their families. Because I mean, 4-H just in general already embraces that it's more than just your kids being dropped off at a meeting and that's it. You know, it's a family effort. It's a big group. It's a community that's involved. That's why things like leadership and community service and civic engagement are so important to 4-H. It's more than just completing projects. So when I was looking for jobs, I pretty much just narrowed it down to a few that met those categories. There weren't too many. Really were what I felt like would fulfill that. And so I had the opportunity to come out to Missouri and interview. And boy, I went home and really had to question, was it worth interviewing the other 2 interviews that I had coming up? It was just, there's something that clicks with this group, with these people, with this organization, that we want to make the best better. We want to continue to strive for that. And I don't know if that's just a Midwest thing. I don't know if that is, but there was definitely something about this community that I'm in, and I've learned that it's throughout Missouri, that really did pull me back to the Midwest. I enjoyed Virginia. I loved the people I worked with, but it has been hard to beat how things have been here for the last 10 months. So really getting to go back, I think just, being closer to a family, of course, is a big plus too. But yeah, looking for a place that I could find that connection, that similarity with people was really important, and found that in Missouri and haven't looked back.
So what has your first 10 months on the job been like?
It's been a lot of learning, which has been great in my book. I am very much someone that likes to observe and see how people do things without me being a part of the equation. So a lot I've kind of watched. I've kind of seen, what do club leaders need? What do my youth need? What do people at the state level need from me as a specialist? Where can I kind of play a role? So sometimes I've been action oriented, but more often than not, it's been sit back, observe, and then kind of get a game plan going. I would say a lot of that game plan has kind of been altered in the last month or so with how things have been going, but altered and not completely thrown out by any means. Just kind of things might look a little different, but we've still got that same mission and vision in Missouri Extension and 4-H. So how do we kind of, just follow along with that? So it has been great. It has been a lot of learning as things come up. So when I was hired in June, my very first day was our 4-H camp for the counties that I serve. And so I went straight to 4-H camp, spent a week there, didn't know anyone from anyone else, learned really fast who everyone was, but didn't necessarily know who anyone was to begin with. And then 3 weeks later was one of my first county's fairs. So we had a fair the last week in June, and then 2 the first week in July. And so I would say this job was a very quick learn on the, learn as you go type of situation. But it's been great so far. Everything that I experienced in that interview has been true to come to this community and see how passionate they are about youth education and about people having a good experience. Some strong volunteers that are really willing to say, yeah, how can I put in some time? It is just amazing to see during this time some volunteers step up and say, okay, we can't meet in person, but we're going to find a way to do something. And that doesn't always have to be a Zoom call. That doesn't have to be a Facebook, live or a video or anything. Some of them are saying, hey, post your picture of your project or your demonstration on our Facebook page, or I'll send you a postcard just saying, hey, thanks for being a part of 4-H. Reminding people that our community is still here, still strong. So I've really enjoyed it. And it's been great to then get to work with the community more on the county engagement side, with whether it be, the health department or with the schools or the different communities to really foster those relationships. So I would say this has been one of the best opportunities I've had, just even in the 10 months that I've been here. So hopefully that kind of answered your question. It kind of got a little long-winded, but certainly passionate about what I'm doing. So
Absolutely, and that shows through. And that's why I was saying it feels like you've been here like 2
yeah,
years, because you hit the
it
ground
feels the same
running.
on my side too, for sure.
You hit the ground running. You're not shy in staff meetings, and you have great ideas. And a lot of it is a fresh idea for some of us. And that's one thing that I know I battle with is if we're challenged or stuff like this, we get kind of not in a rut, but kind of in the same routine where we don't where I should say I, not we. And sometimes that's probably true for my
Yeah,
counterparts as well,
sure. Yeah.
where we kind of get in the same box and we forget sometimes we need to step outside of it.
Right.
And we let some of the stuff on how things have went in the past, dictate how it's going to go in the future, which is not true a lot of the times. And so that's one thing, is a different perspective and fresh ideas coming in, and you're not shy to speak up and say something. You will take lead and charge, and um, that's been awesome. And that's why it's like, oh yeah, you just came in and it's like day one. It was like,
Yeah.
oh yeah, she fits in. We're good. No worries.
Right, right. No, you're absolutely right in saying that it's unfortunate when we get stuck, and I can speak for one that I'm guilty of this as well. I am happy to be the new person here in Missouri 4-H in the Northwest, but I have been in positions. I was involved in the graduate student assembly at Virginia Tech for 5 years, and in that fourth and fifth year, I could feel myself just kind of doing what I'd always done and expected things to be the exact same way, and really been critical of some change. But to remind myself that that's it, it works, it's okay. But when you have something hit big, like what we're going through now, that makes the challenge even more difficult. We were discussing previously some of our programming that we do, and Clover Kid Camp is an example of that. For most of us, that is a pretty straightforward, okay, it's a one-day camp for our 5 to 8-year-olds. We kind of covered this, and this. We have nutrition specialists maybe coming for lunch. Everything's pretty straightforward of what we do every year. But this year, that's a new challenge. Some of us might be needing to move virtual for that camp. We don't know right now. And so I think for those of us that get stuck in a rut, that becomes even more of a challenge, versus if we're willing to be a little more flexible from the get-go, we can deal with those changes even more rapidly and a little more successful. So I definitely, I see that. And I thank you for all of your positive compliments on me coming in and kind of just not being afraid of saying, hey, here's kind of what my thoughts are. And I hope that, 5-6 years down the road, there will be someone like me who can remind me, hey, that's great that you've done that for 5 years, but here's something we should think about. Here's something that maybe you should consider changing. So
That's one thing I've noticed when I started, and some of the other YPAs, and it wasn't anything negative, but they're like, oh yeah, you're ready to go. You're taking off. They're like, just rein it in. You'll see. And I'm like, no, go. And now like new people coming in, I'm like, oh, give it time. You'll get figured out.
sure,
But
sure.
at the same time, we may say that stuff, but even when I'm trying something wild and crazy that may not worked in the past, or other stuff like that, those people who are like rein it back in are the ones who are helping me just right down in the trenches,
Mhm.
and they're like, this may not work, but I'm going to help you because we all want to be successful. It's just kind of funny how that mentality is like, when you stand up in some of our staff meetings, you're like all the new people and they've got all these great ideas and they're hitting the ground running. You're like, just wait, it'll come
Right,
to you.
right, right.
And there's some of the new people that we have that, I'm reaching out, making sure if I can help in any certain way that I
Mhm.
will, because I know that feeling of what they're going through, and I want them to know that we all support each other in good
Absolutely.
endeavors.
Right. And realistically, there are probably things that you do that you now forget that you do. I certainly get the, oh, you'll rein it in, you'll kind of get into a pattern. But I think you forget sometimes how impactful some of what you're doing is. An example was when I was in the graduate student assembly, we completely rewrote our constitution one year. And then at the end of that year, we were asked by our advisor, what did you do this year? And we listed off a couple of new events that we had hosted. And she goes, but you're forgetting about this entire effort that you put so much time into. And it was because that just seemed normal to us. Like, oh yeah, that's not some big new thing. And so it didn't seem like it was that big of a deal, but realistically it was a really big impact and a lasting one for sure. So I certainly understand what you're saying with us newbies, we come in with 100 different ideas and going 100 miles an hour, and there is a certain point where we have to rein it back in. But it's more of a let's learn from what worked and what didn't work and then focus on what worked. But really getting those reminders ever so often of just because it works, maybe we need to reassess why are we doing it? And is that really, really answering what we want to be helping with our families and our kids?
One of my all my first council meetings, I talked about this, and one of my club leaders asked me month ago, 2 months ago, I can't remember when it was. They asked me whatever happened to my idea was I was going to get a drone and do a lot of footage and stuff
Uh-huh.
like that. So, and we'll have videos and stuff. We'll show it recognition day, and it's going to be
Mm-hmm.
so cool because the drone boom was going on, and
Right.
I'm right in the middle of it. So I got my own drone. I have two of them actually. They're both in pieces because one thing I didn't realize is I struggle with flying drones and I crashed and broke both of them.
Yes.
So I explained that and they're like, yeah, I wouldn't tell anyone I just hope everyone forgets. I was like, hey, listen, it was a learning experience, that's for sure. Then
Right.
sometimes maybe you should, test out your idea a little bit before you, shoot your mouth off like I did and be like, oh yeah, I got this. I got this. And then it crashed and burned just like the drone did.
Sure, sure. But it's good to have different types of personalities on a similar group. I mean, I love that I've got, even within my 3 counties, I've got people that are very much that, hey, we're just going to try it. We'll see how it goes. Oh, that worked really well, or that didn't. Now let's move on from there. And then there are some of us that like to plan a little bit more and get, a game plan going. There are advantages to both. And I don't want a team that doesn't have a little bit of both on within the group, because you need those that are willing to take some risks and say, hey, I'm going to try this. Maybe that didn't work out so well, or maybe it was the best idea since sliced bread. But then you need some that are willing to look at the details, look at the steps. How are we going to move forward? How are we going to problem solve? And sometimes those groups will butt heads within the same team, but that's okay, as long as you can kind of remind each other that we're in this together, trying to solve those problems. So I definitely understand though, being like making those promises and then realizing, oh well, that didn't quite materialize how I wanted it to, but it's still there. You
Exactly.
still have the pieces, so you just have to get them back together.
Exactly. And that's what I'm like now when I do something, be like, hopefully this will be the end result,
Yeah,
not like,
yeah,
hey, this is going to be
exactly. Yeah.
an exact a success. So one of the cool things that you have been doing during this time has been the Facebook Live.
Mhm.
And it's you and Blake. Was that the first
Yeah,
two
Blake
on that?
Gasaway and I. Uh-huh. Hmm.
So, okay, funny story. And I got through his name correctly. We had this thing at one of our retreats where, we talk about our names and how names are important
Uh-huh.
and what other people call you. And Blake said that people call him Blaze.
Yeah.
And I've never thought about, but ever since that, I have to think
Yeah.
before I talk to Blake not to call him Blaze, because that stuck to me. And I told him that, and he was like, "It's okay if you do." I was like, "No, your name is important, and I want to make sure." But for whatever reason, it's like someone told me the other day. I don't know if you listen to country music, but Luke Bryan sounds like Kermit the Frog, and I can't unhear that.
Yeah, it's so true though. Absolutely. No, Blake brings that up all the time. And I think he, yeah, a name is important and you want to get people's names right. But for those that are willing to say, hey, here's something else that people call me, or sometimes they hear and they think that's what my name is, that's also, it gives kind of a nice little personality part to people. But yeah, so the two of us kind of were the 4-H Live online learning was a little bit of our brainchild. It's kind of funny to think about how it started. We had a CES, the Community Engagement County Engagement Specialist meeting that Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. That a lot of things had kind of come together with COVID-19, and so that Friday before we left. For lunch or to leave the conference, Blake and I both run our Chicks in the Classroom or embryology programs for our 3 counties. And we usually get eggs from Tyson's, which are over in Pettis County from his triad. And so I had said, what's our plan going forward? Can we do something online for our schools or our youth that don't get to participate in our second session? Because we would have to nix probably those programs with those eggs. And he said, yeah, well, his wife is an educator, a teacher, and she's struggling with, what do I do with my kids for the next couple of weeks now that we're out of school? We're being asked to lesson plan and everything. And we said, could we do something through 4-H? Is there something based on the curriculum that we're already getting out to our schools or to our kids? And how can we put that online? And so within 3 days, we had 9 weeks of topics and presenters already filled up. Between 4-H specialists in our 2 triads to our YPAs. YPAs played a huge role in getting that list together. We also engaged our nutrition specialists, our ag and business, and then our livestock specialists and horticulture specialists. So we went even outside of 4-H specifically to say, you know what, we've got a great horticulture specialist who does some fantastic things with composting and seed starting. Let's get her involved. Myself and Blake don't need to be the expert on everything. So we went outside of 4-H to kind of pull those people in, started that off the Tuesday after everything kind of was up in the air. And then Missouri 4-H said, hey, that is great what you're doing. Would you be willing to do it statewide? And so we were able to expand. Originally, we were going to do Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. And then with state's help, we expanded to Wednesday and Friday as well. And so it's just gone from there. And I mean, we've heard great feedback from people, gives them the opportunity to still engage with 4-H, but not be too overwhelmed. Kind of keeps that connection that we're all looking for right now that it's a little hard to find. So it was one of those things we were just talking about, how sometimes you have to take risks, and we didn't see it as a risk, but it started out as one and definitely blossomed from there.
It's one thing that kind of helped me give the push on doing this is I saw you guys, and those are awesome. And here's the problem. Well, it's not. It is a problem, but then again, it's not.
It's okay.
I would turn them on in the office and watch them, and Debbie's like, "What are you working on?" I was like, "Have you seen this Facebook Live?" She's like, we have stuff to do. I said, "I understand that, but I'm a kid right now, and I am learning."
I know. Oh my goodness. And sometimes as a 4-H specialist, we don't get to be in the classrooms or be educators nearly as much as I know some of us hope to be. And so I just had a blast those first 3 days getting to record on my food science and engineering topics, because so much of that is right in line with where my passion is. And no, I completely understand. I think that was the reaction by quite a few people of what is this? This is new, but I think it ended up sticking. And we've got lots of people around the state involved, and lots of people from other states watching as well. So.
I think it's a great idea, and it took me back to as a kid. I would watch the Magic School Bus. Full disclosure, I watched a couple episodes of the reboot that they did.
Uh-huh.
I need to get back into that because I loved it, but it took me back to that, and it's like, these are cool. And that's some things that right now maybe the 4-Hers don't realize how cool some of the stuff is that they get to do, that us as staff would be like, yeah, we'll go jump in and do it.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
4-H camp, uh, for us, when the kids go to, we have 2 days for the pool.
Mm-hmm.
And when they go to the pool, some of the staff go down to the leathercraft room and
Mm-hmm.
start doing leather stuff. So, we get to participate and have just as much fun as they do.
Right.
But
Right.
that's one thing that, watching you guys do that, and that's something like that where it's organic and it just comes out of nowhere and it just takes off because you guys have views in different states. And I believe someone said, or I saw it, I can't remember, Canada, some people in Canada were
Yep.
watching it.
Yep.
So
Yeah, it's crazy. And I think we have also we've put a lot of value in the fact that our production it's fine. I mean, sometimes we have audio problems, sometimes the video is a little wonky, but that's also part of it. We are not video experts, and we've certainly been talking to your colleague, and Cody hopefully will help us out with some of what he's doing in the future too. And we're always looking to improve, but there is a little bit of really authentic learning with it being so, I filmed one in my kitchen, because we were slowly being moved out of the office. And so I'd already decided, well, let's go ahead and just move things to my house. And so shot one of the videos there. And so it definitely gives that connection that I think people are hoping for, that people get through things like Magic School Bus or Sesame Street, or these things that you don't really realize you're learning, but you're learning. um,
absolutely.
and that's something we're trying to do with the videos is, yeah, teach you a little project, but give you a little bit of background. With my science ones, I said, yeah, let's do something cool. Let's make some ice cream in a bag. But really, we're going to talk about, the states of matter. And so when you think about ice cream in the future, you might be able to think about how it goes from a solid to a liquid, and, where does gas play in there as well. So I think that's really where a lot of our passions as educators come out, is opportunities like that, where we're teaching you, but you may not even realize what you're learning until way down the line. So yeah, I've really enjoyed it. I'm excited that we've got a full program all the way through May 15th. We've even got today, specifically, I don't know when you'll air this podcast, but we are starting double features for some of our days. We've had so many specialists and YPAs that have been very enthusiastic, wanting to help out, and we've tried to not turn away a single person, because we want to fit them in somewhere. So today we'll have 2 people talking about breads, and then tomorrow we'll have 2 different activities going on, and they'll just go back to back. And with the beauty of the platform we used is they're live. They're now pre-recorded, but appear live on Facebook. But that also means then that they stay up as videos afterwards too. So even if you can't make it at that 3:30 time, families can come back and view them later on. We're also working on getting them onto YouTube so that families and groups that either struggle to run Facebook or don't utilize Facebook for a variety of reasons, they're able to find them on YouTube as well. So we're excited to continue to expand it, and we'd be interested to see where it goes in the future, what that might look like, as we settle into future 4-H years.
I hope it's something that we keep, because I think that's something that, as staff, it's, we just not a bunch of paper pushers. Here, let me show you some cool stuff.
Mhm.
Uh, you were talking about giving a little background when you're doing the projects.
Mhm.
That's one. There are some things that if I'm passionate about, it'll be something, if it's like scientific, and I know the history of it, that I take, I go down a rabbit hole, and then I have to
Yeah.
remember I'm working with children who may not find this near as exciting, and then I'm like, oh well, we're way off topic. You're half asleep. I probably ought to get back to this. But I
Right.
find, like the science or the reasonings why on a lot of things just as interesting, the activity, or maybe even more sometimes, where I'm just like 3 a.m. and I'm down a Wikipedia or YouTube rabbit hole watching how this stuff, comes together and
Right.
stuff works. And it it's one of those things that trying to be conscious about when teaching and working with kids. But I appreciate that when you're talking about background, because I think that stuff is important.
Yeah. Definitely. Definitely.
um oh, see, I get on these
I.
I get on these stats and then I forget what I was going to say, because it was relative to that.
That's
But
okay. I understand. Yep.
Yeah, I'll get on that, and then I'll just forget what I was going to ask or what I was going to say.
Yeah. And then it comes back a couple minutes later and you're like, well, this isn't relevant anymore with where we've moved, but this was a great question. And I want to ask it now.
Exactly, and it's like, oh yeah, my ADHD kicked in, and I now remembered. Um, oh, we were talking about YouTube and utilizing
Oh, yeah.
that. So you're going to be a YouTube star.
Oh,
So
gosh, I guess.
you finally made it. You
I
can pick
did.
up the phone and call home and be like, Mom, I'm a YouTube star.
That's right. That's right. No, it's crazy to think, a year back or 2 years ago, what I would have been doing now. Um, maybe I could have given you a few things that probably align with what I'm doing now, but it just shows how trying to stay a little flexible, staying a little adaptive to things is really important. It allows you to get into that innovation realm and really take those risks that some of us are comfortable with, some aren't. But what can you do to try and meet the needs of where your groups are at right now? So yeah, I certainly hope we can keep it going, and I think with the YouTube component we'll be able to. It's a little more easier to find things on YouTube than search through Facebook pages for an old video or something. So or at least that's what I found. So I'm excited for that for sure.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I remember now what I was going to ask you about, and then I've got another tech question lined up.
Okay.
Woohoo! Look how that goes. We were talking about doing Facebook Live and it being live, and that's one thing that and I can't remember if I told you, but I have only edited two, well, three. I had one where my power fell out, and
Mhm.
so it said it was plugged in, but it wasn't. So I had to splice two parts together. But I think that's one thing that I appreciate about doing live and stuff like that is it's authentic.
Right. Right.
And I understand we need to have a level of professionalism. I completely understand that. But I think sometimes the way we have gone, whether it be business and society, that we've gotten really professional and we've lost that authenticity. And that's one thing that you guys both are professional. You guys, I say you as in who have done the Facebook Live,
Mhm.
but it's also that real world issues of, hey, my internet just completely went down and, the electricity, power, everything's out. But that's where we're at. You get it back going and then you go through it. And, it's not always going to be perfect. And that's something that we're trying to we've got to learn and deal with during these
Mhm.
times that we have right now.
Right, right. Some of it's a trade-off. If you're, I understand that some people aren't comfortable with live. There's ways we can kind of get around it. But there is really that connection that you can create by doing something live. I mean, you and I talking right now would be way different. And then if you gave me a list of questions and I just gave you my answers, having that one-sided conversation. And so to create that community and that connection, that sense of belonging is really important, not just in 4-H, but especially in life for moments like this. Really being able to facilitate that is important and helpful. And so yeah, I definitely agree with that. For our presenters that pre-record, we tell them a lot. We're like, just do it once. Just record what happens. There have been some amazing videos that we've gotten that end up being actually pre-recorded, but the things that their kids say or that they say or ways they explain things, if you thought that out and tried to retake it over again, you wouldn't get that same authenticity. And so that's kind of what we're going for. It's not going to be professionally produced, but that's not what we want either. We're here to show you who we are, and that's who you're going to get if we were doing a live program in person as well. So.
And see, and this is where it kind of gets me in trouble because I'm not well organized or structured. I am purely let's shoot from the hip, John Wayne style, and see what
Sure,
happens.
sure, yeah.
I've got a beginning and an end, and let's see where the middle takes us.
Yeah, yeah.
So, what is one thing that you have learned through this time that you're going to take forward with you?
Yeah. Oh my goodness. So much already. I mean, there's certainly the tech side of how to help others become more comfortable with various technologies. I really am happy that I've been able to help people with things like Facebook Live or Facebook Premiere. A variety of technologies. I've been working with OBS Studio, which is a way that I record some of my instructional tutorials. I love all of that. I would say though, where my real aha moments come from are the ones that interacting with our youth and our families right now. Reminding myself to constantly go back to what are their needs, how quickly that can change, from one day to the next, or one week to the next. How important it is to continue to go back to what do our youth want, what do they need, what's important to them right now. This event, with COVID-19, has really just put a big, slap in a couple of our faces, going, yeah, actually, I should be doing this all of the time. I should always be checking in with our families and saying, hey, is this working for you? Is this what you need? And sometimes that answer is going to be no, and that's okay. To then say, okay, well, that wasn't going to work for them. If we would have done Facebook Live and we would have had 20 people watching it, maybe we would have reassessed and said, okay, maybe they need something else right now. What else could we try? That didn't happen, and so we're going to keep going forward with it. But I think it's important sometimes to say that's not what our youth or our families needed right now, and that's regardless of where we're at. Whether this is more of the quote unquote normal 4-H year, if it's something like this, it's important to really think about that, because then we're also not wasting our energy trying to do things that really aren't helping us move that needle forward. So I would say hopefully that will be the biggest thing that I take out of all of this, and to also just focus on myself. I've been enjoying relaxing at home when the day is done a little bit more than I think I have been the last couple of months, just because it's important. Take time for yourself, and it's good for everyone to learn a little bit of.
I appreciate our families and club leaders and them being candid and saying no more to me.
Absolutely.
And I'm
Absolutely.
like, thank you. Where was this pushback? You don't always
Right.
have to go along with me. It's not always a brilliant idea that I well thought out.
Right.
And I may actually have, put a lot of time and effort into it. But
Yeah.
if it's something that you don't need or don't see a fit, then let's not do it. But
Right.
now I see it as when they say yes to something, it's a need, it's a fit, it's something that they truly believe in. And I appreciate that so much more. And so when they tell me no, I'm like, thank you.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And I remember when I first started, I think it was my first meeting in Caldwell County, and I was doing it solo. And they just came up and were like, I want to do this, this, and this, and this. And I was like, okay, cool. And
Hmm.
they're like, what? And I was like, yeah, let's do it. You have the idea. Well, I just didn't think that it would go. I was like, well, did you ask? Well,
Right.
no. I'm like, well, then how do you know? I was like, this sounds like a great idea. You're the ones that, that are going to implement it. I'm going to work my tail off to make this as successful as it can be. You have a better connection with the community and the kids and all of that stuff than I do. So let's go do it.
Yeah. Absolutely. I try to remind my communities, that my councils, my families, that they are the connections here. I am happy to keep things moving forward. Like you said, work my tail off to make things happen. But really, if we're interested, I take the examples, if we're interested in doing the water festival in my counties where we currently don't, or expanding some of our chicks in the classroom curriculum, or the schools that we go into, that's going to be up to those families. A lot of times I can do what I can, but those connections already exist with the people in our communities. And so hopefully those are things that moving forward we can continue to facilitate, because that's a great observation, that we want no, because that also then gives us a more passionate yes, as well. Where do we focus our time? Where do I focus our energy? And how do we keep 4-H and extension relevant? And how do we make sure we're meeting those needs of what people want and need? So I really, really appreciate that observation, and I think I would really hope that that can continue on for a really long time. Kind of this reminder of how do we get people to say a candid yes and no of what they want and what they need, and how then do we serve that?
Yeah, and we tried needs assessments and we've tried all this other stuff. I've sent surveys out for spin clubs. What are
Right.
some of the interest? And no one sends anything back. And they're like, "Oh,
Mm.
would you ever do that spin club?" I was like, and I'm spitballing. I'm like, you guys gotta understand. I'm maybe 30 and closer in relation and connection to some people, but I'm not with these kids as much as you are.
Right.
So what I think is cool or fun or would be great for a spin club does
Right.
not necessarily mean that that's the same for everyone.
Absolutely.
So I need those ideas and stuff like that. And then, and I don't know how much success you have with spin clubs, but the one that I had that really hit was in DeKalb County. I did a personal safety, kind of a self-defense
Mhm.
class, and one of our 4-H volunteers is a deputy sheriff here in DeKalb County, and he took the lead on that, and I had like 20 kids sign up and 13 stuck all the way through it, I think.
Awesome.
And that was one thing that I had a mom email me March, end of February, beginning of March. Hey, when are we going
Uh-huh.
to start that up? Because I'll pack the class, and
Yeah.
they traveled from Caldwell County. I've been working with Caldwell County trying to get one
Uh-huh.
going there, but they were coming from Polo and over to the Osborne area, and so they had a bit of a drive. And they said, "Yeah, I'll bring my kids and some more kids, and we can pack the thing if you will have it." So it's one of those things where you hope it works, and that's one that I had the leader that would say, "Yeah, I've done it." And I saw a need, and this really came out about it was the spring, 'cause I did it a year ago.
Huh.
I set it up, but I don't know if you remember, there was those abductions at like Targets and stuff in Wisconsin, and then
Uh-huh.
off the highway, and it hit like 35 going down and
Mhm.
got into Missouri and stuff like that. And I was, that's what we need for our kids.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. And that's great. I mean, that is, to me, that is a combination of you identifying some needs and then finding the resources in the community. Because it's also really important to know that you don't want to duplicate things that people are doing. Here in Saline County, we're very lucky that we've got a lot of agricultural production, some different tech and ag tech companies. And so one of the things that I had hoped to do this April, unfortunately won't be happening due to a lot of different limitations, was have a STEM day of sorts and involve our ag industries, get representatives from those groups to be there to help with activities, to be involved. Because you don't have to reinvent everything. They've got some great things, great knowledge that they want to share. And so I think you did a really good, had a really good approach of, let's think of it as a system. How can we already engage those assets that we have in the community? And yeah, that sounds like that was a real big hit, and hopefully can continue in the future.
That STEM that you were talking about I think we need to bring back science fairs. Um,
Yeah.
I was not good at that. I had a couple when I was in high school, maybe just one. I want to feel like I'd say it was two. I participated. I was horrible at it, and I had fun. I think I tried making a volcano. It went,
Yeah.
I mean, horribly, horribly wrong.
Yeah.
I saw a picture of it in like 6 months ago, and I was like,
Yeah.
boy, was that fun, but I would not, that's not my area of expertise.
Right, right. Well, and you never know where that's going to be. I mean, like I said at the beginning of this, I used to be quite a bit more shy than I am, a lot more introverted. And in middle school and high school, was involved in some robotics competitions. I usually just kind of sat towards the back. I was, a lot more reserved. But I remember those, and I had so much fun. And it didn't always have to mean that I was the one doing all the programming, or it might be some of the back end work that I'd really kind of focused on, or maybe, it was how do we involved some of our challenges where you had to involve your landscape with your robot. And so how maybe was I the one that worked on that, thought about the art side of what we were doing in STEM a little bit more and how that connected. And so I enjoy STEM days and science fairs and things that kind of get the kids focused on, here's an activity that we're doing, and then meeting them with a lot of the things that they're already learning in the classroom and making those connections for them. Because a lot of the times kids will be doing, whether it's STEM or science specifically, they're already doing that in their projects, in whether that's in 4-H or in things that they're doing in school, and they just might not realize it yet. So sometimes as educators, that's the role we play, is how do I show you that, yeah, here in quilting, you were cutting this piece at this angle and in this direction, and you had to use math, you had to use fractions to determine what you needed to cut and where you needed to cut. And so sometimes just making those connections is what we can definitely do as educators. And yeah, I love science fairs, so you never have to twist my arm to help bring those back.
Oh, we may have to look into that because I think that's a good idea.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
and that's more of the 4-H is more than cows and plows that I try to push through. So, have you been able to attend many of the state events like teen conference, state congress, stuff like that? Have you been to those?
Yeah. So I haven't. Unfortunately, starting in June last year meant that I joined
Oh, that's
after
right.
both of those. Yeah, I know. I was so excited to get to go to Teen Conference this year. And a great group of people, not just from my counties, but I know coming from the region. So I was just as bummed as a lot of people were to see those canceled. But certainly understand and am looking forward to next year already.
I know, and then they're doing is this teen conference and state congress together?
I think they're back-to-back weeks, if I remember right.
Oh,
Yeah,
it's back-to-back weeks.
I
Oh,
think
I
so.
thought
Yeah.
they were just going to throw all the madness in together
Whew.
at once. That would be
Goodness,
fun.
that really would be an all hands on deck one then if we were going to try and do that. But yeah, think back to back weeks, end of May and then first week in June.
Okay, I have to share, and people who are listening are probably going to get tired of this because I've told some of the same stories multiple times. So in September will be year 4 for me.
Mm-hmm.
I'll finish up going through 4 calendar years. So last year I went to my first teen conference as
Mm-hmm.
a chaperone, and that's one of those that I had not been to. And Debbie said, "Steven, I think you should go." And I was like, man, let me check my calendar. I'm kind of busy. And
Right.
she's like, "Your calendar's empty." I was like, "Well,
She already knew.
yeah." I was dragging my feet, and I was like, "Okay, I'll sign up."
Yeah.
So I have 2 kids from Caldwell County that I knew. Well, 3 kids, but how our group ended up, I traded how the rooming and everything. I traded
Mm-hmm.
with one of our chaperones from Clinton
Right.
County, and so she watched one of my group members, and I took one of hers. It was a trade off, just how everything roomed out and how they wanted to be assigned. So I go down to Columbia. It's a hotel, and they get there, and they give me my packet of stuff that I need to know and list
Right.
the kids' names. And they said, "Steven, take a picture of these 10 kids, because this is the first time you're meeting 8 of them." Great. Get there in the hotel, and there's just kids running everywhere. They're catching up with their friends, they're trying to meet new friends and all this stuff. And so I go to take the picture, and I get my camera up on my phone, and I take the picture and I count, and I was like, there's only 9 kids. I started with 10, 9, and I look, and there's a kid running away, and he's like, "Oh, I had to throw something away." And I was like, in the middle of the picture, he's like, "Yeah, I'm sorry." So I'm like, "Get back here, take a picture, get them all grouped up," and we're immediately go onto campus the first
Mm-hmm.
night,
Right.
first day. Get them loaded up on the bus, situated, count heads. Hey, you're here, you're there. On the way to campus, of course, somebody's getting arrested. And I'm like, see, this is what happens. This 4-H prevents this. This is guaranteed. And of course, they're watching. They're like, what is going on? And it's like, oh, this is a great learning experience. So I sit with my 10 boys, and I said, all right, we're going to get off the bus, and we're going to go over here, and we're going to have a little chit chat.
Mm-hmm.
Steven's laying down the law. Steven has this conversation. Hey, be respectful, represent 4-H, represent your county, blah, blah, blah. Pay attention to what's going on. Listen to instructions and directions. Behave, got it? Good. So the other kids, they're not going through this conversation.
Mm-hmm.
They take off and go across. Well, so do my group, but does anyone stop and look, make sure as you peek around a bus
Right.
on a road if there's a car coming? Nope, we just take off with the dead sprint. I'm like, whoa, 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 whoa. Back up here, regroup. We're going to have this conversation about looking both ways before we cross the street.
Right.
14 conference. So I'm already nervous because I'm in charge of 4-H kids,
Mm-hmm.
and these are someone's children and kids, and they're special, and I have none. I am single. I don't know what it's like, and I'm like, nope, nothing bad is gonna happen whatsoever
Right.
on my.
Right.
And I'm paranoid, and like everyone else is like, oh, Steven, it's fine. I'm like, well, yeah, you have kids. If you've had 2, I've heard conversations. I remember when I was little, as I go down another rabbit hole, I went to stick a fork in an or stick my finger in an outlet. My mom's like, "Are you gonna stop him?" My dad's like, "He'll figure it out." And I was like, "The first one was babied." They're like, "Oh no, no, no!" Me, they're
Right.
like, "Nah, he's good. He'll figure this deal out."
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, that's not me with someone else's kids. This is, oh no, we're getting back. So
Mm-hmm.
I get that, get them on campus. Then we leave. We go to eat on campus. So out the doors we go at 100 miles an hour. Whoa, 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 let's get back here, and I'm trying to wrangle my group, and everybody else's kids are all over, and they're like, hey, can you watch my kids? I'm like, yeah, sure, just watch my stragglers that are back there. And I get them, and then they're running and jumping off park benches and weaving in and out of traffic and cars that are parked on the road, and watching the people get parking tickets. And
Oh boy.
would you guys? So we go the dining hall, and we're waiting there, and college kids are still on campus.
Mm-hmm.
Two of the boys in my group have the Make America Great hats on again, and I understand how that can be perceived. I was like, oh dear Lord, please just let's go through this without any incidents whatsoever. I have no political feelings whatsoever. I just understand the climate that's going on.
Sure, sure.
So this college girl comes up to these two boys and says, hey, and I was like, oh no, where is this one going? And she was like, can I take a picture with you? And they're like, yeah, sure. And of course they are all about it,
Right,
And
right.
so, they're hamming it up in the pictures, and then she walks off, and they're like, hey, we're going to go sit by here. I was like, no, you're not. Well, why not? She wanted to take a picture. I said, listen, Romeo, you had your chance there. I said, now it's time to let her go. So they sit at a table as close as they could to her. And so we go through that. We eat, which was interesting. And I'll explain later. Don't hang up when we get done with this, because I'll explain why that was interesting. So then, all right, we're back to the hotel, go to the dance. I've got a wing, and some of the kids are spread out for the other chaperones, and staff people are asking, hey, look for them. I need to get them up there.
Right.
So I'm knocking on doors, and these girls with another staff person are like, hey, what's going on? Get them back up there. Cool. Dance is going well, making sure the kids are doing something at least. So get that going on. Bedtime. Got them all into bed. We're ready to go. Hey, we got to be up at 7 o'clock in the morning. So let's lights out, all of that stuff. Cool. Here comes the Domino's man walking down my hall. And I was like, please don't go to one of my kids' room. Please don't go to one of my kids' room. Please don't go to one. And he goes to one of my kids' rooms, and two of the shyest kids that I have, right? So great kids. And I knock on the door, and I was like, whoa, what's up? What's your story, man? And he's like, what do you mean? He's like, I'm Domino's. I was like, why are you here? Like, he's getting the third degree. Like, it's interrogation time. Like, I'm going to make you sweat it out. And so they answered the door, and I was like, you guys ordered pizza? Well, technically, no. I called home, and mom ordered pizza and paid for it, and I just have to sign it. Lights were off. They were in bed except for to answer the door, then went back to the bed. And I was like, the only rule that they broke was being out of bed.
Right.
And I told Brad Anderson, he was like, well, it looks like we're going to have to put the no pizza call-ins on there. He's like, it used to be on there, but we took it off because we hadn't had any issues. I said, time to put that one back on.
Yep.
So I get kids to bed, and everything's quiet. And a couple of chaperones and I, this is like 12:30. We finally say, hey, all right, well, cool, we're going to bed. And I'm just like, I'm nervous. I don't sleep at all that night, because I'm like, man, there's a million things that could go wrong here. Like,
Right.
I'm running every worst case scenario through my head. None of it happened.
Right.
What did happen was they stayed up all night and were talking, and then at 4 o'clock in the morning, they decided to go to bed and did not get up on time. And so then they're like, hey, man, I need to get showers. Like, you missed it. I was like, you better put on a lot of deodorant and maybe some body spray, drag a comb through your hair, and let's go, because we got stuff to worry about. I have never been in a room with so many kids pounding coffee in my life that the hotel people could not keep up with them. It wasn't the adults. The adults had like one cup for like an hour. These kids were like 1 and 5, and I'm just like, what is going on?
Oh my goodness.
That was my teen conference experience. And so when I got done, I was like, I don't know if I'm going back as the chaperone. Since then, I've softened my stance. But yeah, it was just an experience in itself.
Yeah. And those are so much fun. Like, don't get me wrong, I love everything we learn at state events, team conference and Congress as well. But a lot of what happens is those connections you make with people and with your peers and little instances like that. And yeah, boy, the pizza reminds me a lot. When I taught in college, I always had a saying. I said, fool me once, shame on me. Fool me twice, it's going in the syllabus. And I stuck to that pretty well. Usually semester 2, I had a few things that got added of can't do this. This is not advised, so, but hey, that's part of the fun of also being in 4-H is you make the best, keep people safe. Of course, we've always got a standard for that. But have fun and let people, enjoy themselves. And that's one of the main things with 4-H live online learning that we keep telling people, our presenters, have fun. Like if you mess up, or my very first recording, I was making ice cream and you know what I forgot? The ice. So great, keep moving and have fun with it, and people will enjoy that. And yes, keep them safe, of course. But boy, kids are going to order pizza. What are we going to do?
Absolutely. And everyone has a state congress or teen conference story as a staff person.
Absolutely.
Everyone.
Absolutely. Yeah. I know. I'm excited to get to make mine next year. So
it'll be interesting. I am all out of questions, and I look down and it is 12:30, so we've been doing this a while.
That's all right.
And I know you got other things you need to be doing in lunch and all of that important stuff. So I'll finish up the story.
We'll have to touch base on that more as that way I'll have a story kind of through you by the next time I go to team conference for next year.
So thank you for coming on. I really enjoyed this conversation. It was really fun learning more about you, your background, and just general conversation about 4-H. So thank you.
Absolutely. This was great. Thank you for having me. I'm glad I could just not only talk to you, but kind of get to engage some of the families and youth out there, and hopefully they enjoyed it and have more questions for us. And I really appreciate what you're doing and what you're getting started for Missouri 4-H.
Awesome. Thank you very much.
Absolutely.